Hey everybody, I'm Forbes Riley and welcome to today's show. There's a statistic that says half of the people who get married will get divorced. Well, you know, the funny thing about marriage is we all celebrate it, we have a big party, but we don't really celebrate divorce, which you should, I believe. It's the next chapter in your life, you guys part ways, but it's not quite so easy. I'm excited to bring to you the divorce journey attorney. Poonam, welcome to my stage. How are you?
Thank you so much, Forbes. It's such a pleasure to be here.
You are extraordinary. You know that?
Yes.
Now, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in London, in UK, and I moved here when I was 21 years old.
And when did you decide you wanted to be an attorney?
At the age of 13. So my parents used to watch a lot of Perry Mason
I just said
movies.
that, yes.
I used to watch that and Columbo, and I was like, I just want to be an attorney. I want to be a lawyer.
Why?
But I think at that time I thought it was because I'd watched all these series with Perry Mason and I liked criminal shows, but it's taken me actually 40 plus years to realize that it wasn't really that. It was, I wanted to have a voice. And I didn't have a voice. I'd suffocated it. I was a very shy person, but I'd suffocated my emotions, and I wanted to have a voice for other people.
Now, we go into whatever detail you want to. A lot of women are silenced in their journey.
Yes.
And it usually happens at a young age, do you find?
Absolutely.
You wrote a book about your journey. Share with us what it's about.
So the journey starts off with, basically, the theory behind it is that from a very early age, we're taught that it's okay to discuss physical pain, right? If I broke an arm, I can go and say, I hurt my arm, and somebody will come and say, okay, we need to take you to the doctor, get it casted up. But emotional pain is inconvenient. It's things that people don't want to listen to. And so somehow, I used to think it was specific to the South Asian culture, but I'm learning as I'm speaking that it's across the board. And we're taught to not speak about our emotional pain because it is inconvenient. We're not taught how to do it. We're taught that if you get physically hurt, you go to the doctors, but nobody really tells you what to do with your emotional pain. So you silence yourself over a period of time. And ultimately, as I learned over 4 decades of pain, that emotional pain started to suffocate me. So basically, at 13 years old, I was sexually assaulted in high school. I was bullied. The pain in the pit of my stomach was so much, I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't something that I could go home and discuss at the time. So I decided to try and end my life with 26 paracetamol pills. And then when my stomach hurt too much, I went and told my mom. I was hospitalized, but you know, I was from immigrant parents who were making a life in the UK for us, that were working so hard to educate us, that even they weren't taught about emotional well-being. So I went to 2 therapy sessions. I moved to an all-girls school from there, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. And then along the way, I think because of everything that had happened and the guilt that I'd carried and the shame, I was so traumatized that I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I hated what I saw. And I remember the first time somebody called me beautiful, I went like this. I'm like, you're talking to me? And I hated who I was. I hated myself. And I'd carried the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I grew up in a culture where marriage is the be-all and end-all of a woman's life, right? So it was, at the age of 21, I knew my education was to find me a suitable partner, to get married, to find, it was the be-all and everything of my life. Everything I was taught was to be this great wife. Education was important, but it was about having a family and everything. So imagine growing up in that environment where your marriage is supposed to be everything. I entered voluntarily into an arranged marriage. And came into the US when I was 21 years old.
Now, wait a second. Explain the tradition of arranged marriage.
So arranged marriage isn't that you've not seen your partner. Those were the olden days. This is you get introduced to somebody and you decide whether you want to get married. So nobody held a gun to my head and said you had to do this. So I came to the US in a day and a half, decided to, okay, I'm going to get engaged. Went back home, my best friend's husband met up with me and said, you're running away. And I said, I'm not running away from anything. And of course he was right. I was running away from my emotions, and I just felt this was the easiest way for me to deal with cultural expectations, and I would just get married.
So you meet this man.
I meet this man.
And?
He was charming. He was good looking. I mean, there was nothing not to like about him.
Okay.
But my gut told me that this wasn't okay.
Well, you weren't in love yet. You hadn't really known him.
No, and we'd spoken over the phone. He'd come and met me once, but my gut had told me something wasn't right, and I just didn't listen. My mom had actually told me 3 months into the engagement, I don't think this is the right thing. But for me, it was, no, I'm not going to fail at anything else. I'm not going to have someone else tell. It was about me not being good enough, right? That's how I felt. And it was the easiest way to live up to cultural expectations, and also the emotions of who the hell else is going to marry me? I mean, I've been through all this stuff. That's how you think.
And you're 21 at the time?
I'm 21, and that's how you think. So I did get married, and within a month of my marriage, my worst fears came true. It was an abusive marriage on many levels.
How?
So initially it was verbally, and then there were aspects of it that were physical that got pretty bad towards the end.
Why did he feel the need to do that to such a beautiful young girl, do you think?
So I've obviously forgiven him over the years. We have a very civil relationship now. It's not my story to tell his story, but people go through trauma, and this is why it's so important for me to do the work that I'm doing. People go through trauma, and often as parents, or we tend to ignore it, not know how to deal with it. But what we don't realize is if you don't deal with your child's trauma, it continues and it becomes generational trauma. So because he had unresolved trauma that was not dealt with and was shoved under the rug, that transpired into his relationship. So imagine we both got married. I was 21, he was 23, and both of us came into this marriage with unresolved trauma.
Oh, wow.
So as individuals, you're dealing with it in different ways.
Right.
And his was to deal with it another way. Mine may have been to be angry and yell because I didn't feel heard, right? I wasn't being heard. I was being treated a certain way. And then he couldn't deal with that. So it was just, or I was crying and he couldn't deal with me crying. So I learnt to shut the tears off very quickly. So basically I went to law school in the US.
How long did that marriage last?
13 years and two beautiful children later.
2 children, okay.
2 children.
Boy, girl?
Yes.
Okay. You went to law school and he was okay with that?
That was my condition on getting married. I would not go through the arranged marriage unless I came here and went to law school. So I went to law school, passed the New Jersey, New York bar exam. 5 years later, had one child, and then 2 years later, had another child. But I decided to take a back seat in my career because I'd worked 15 to 20 hours a week because he was a Wall Street guy, was making the money, and I had the opportunity to be with the children and work from home. So I gave up my job in New York and I'd worked independently. But fast forward when things got really bad and I didn't want my kids in that environment and decided to file for divorce. I was working 15 hours a week. I was married to somebody who made a lot of money. I was a family lawyer, a corporate immigration and lawyer, but I still didn't know what to do. So I could go to court and fight like hell for a client. And that year, I don't think I lost one case. I was fierce in the work environment, but in the home environment, I was very submissive. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was. I was
the divorce messy?
Confused. You know, not really, because I'd given in to a lot of things and he just wanted to walk away.
If you knew now, though, as someone who counsels other people through divorce emotionally, what might have you said to yourself back then?
I gave up too much, and I gave up too much because I knew he was a controlling individual, and working the hours that I was working, I should never taken on 50% of the expenses. And my attorney told me, and I said, but you don't know. It will translate to my kids' lives, and I don't want that. I will make it happen, but it took a toll on me.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things people don't realize in a divorce. It's not just the loss of a marriage, it's the destruction of your life as you know it. And for me, it was everything, because that's what I'd been raised to do.
Okay, so now you successfully divorced, you're done, you split. Do you get the kids?
I had primary custody of the kids, yes.
And how did you meet your second husband?
Well, I call that the Indian Kim Kardashian marriage, but it was...
Indian Kim Kardashian marriage, what does that mean?
What it means is it didn't last longer than 3 months.
Oh.
But it was basically, I didn't deal with my emotions. I didn't think I was enough. And you got to remember, in the Indian community, to be divorced 17 years ago was a big deal. I was the only one in my family that was ever divorced. And you're not viewed upon very nicely, right? But I was very lucky, had very supportive friends, a very supportive family.
So how long after do you meet this man?
Well, let's just put it this way. We got married 2 years later. I knew him before, but we didn't start dating until after my divorce, 6 months after my divorce. He had emotional issues that were unresolved. And I just kept attracting the same thing. So what they say is you are what you attract is so true. And
so that divorces. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2011.
You have since developed a system
Yes.
to help deal with this. Number one, unresolved trauma seems to be an issue. Attracting the wrong type of men seems to be an issue. Not feeling you have a voice. Your method is called the SAFE method.
That's right.
Explain that.
So it's about, the universe kept knocking at my door, and I'd had so many health issues because I had unresolved trauma till I was 38. I had 2 strokes, I had a spinal tap, I had surgery, and it was all because of the stress in my life. And I just didn't want to listen to it. I was just working, taking care of my kids, socializing, hanging out, and I was in denial that there was anything wrong with me. And I wouldn't admit that I was stressed. In 2012, when I was paralyzed and wheelchaired to the hospital and had to have a spinal tap, the doctor had come in and said to me, everyone around me, it's stress. And I was like, it's not stress, just leave me alone. And I had my BlackBerry and I'm on the bed going like this, and I was still responding to clients after a spinal tap.
In the hospital bed, yes, okay, a little bit of an overachiever here, not dealing with anything, okay?
The neurologist comes in, snatches the BlackBerry out of my hand and says, if you don't stop, you're going to have a stroke. And I looked at her. Instead of being humbled at that point, I was so arrogant. I was like, you're being ridiculous. I'm 38 years old. I'm not going to have a stroke. And obviously, fast forward a year, I had one, and another 2 years, I had another one. But I had so many signs and I didn't listen. I justified being angry, mad, and sad.
I got it. So you developed this system. Tell me about the system.
So the S is the stop. Stop and accept that you're in pain.
Okay.
Find yourselves worthy to say that you're in pain.
That's a very powerful S.
And that's what starts the healing. Once you can find yourself worthy to say that I'm in pain, that's what starts the healing process.
T.
A stands for...
Oh, A, sorry. I'm thinking of stop. Just stop. So S-A.
A stands for accept responsibility. So I was great at playing the victim. It's comfortable.
Right.
You don't have to make a change. You don't have to do anything. But accept responsibility for where you are in life. For me, it was the unresolved trauma, making decisions from that platform.
Got it. F.
F, forgiveness. 3 types of forgiveness. Forgiveness of the other person, forgiveness of the universe, and forgiveness of yourself.
Love that. And then E?
E is embrace your journey. We all have our individual journeys. We can't compare them to anyone else. And there's lessons that we need to learn. Accept the accolades, accept your flaws, and embrace your journey, because that's truly what makes you comfortable in your own skin and who you are.
So you've now taken on as the attorney journey, you take on the idea of that women need to be coached, men and women, through the pre-session, through the divorce, and afterwards, because it's an emotional roller coaster. And like you said, it's not just dissolving a marriage, there's so much more. I would love you to turn to my audience, talk about the method, and if someone is looking at a divorce, maybe they're not even thinking about it, but they are in a marriage that's not working, or they've gone through it and they've got unresolved issues, what would you say to them?
So what I'll say is that divorce is not just the destruction of a marriage. It's the loss of a family as you know it. It's the loss of a partner as you know it. It's dealing with the finances, child custody. And attorneys can only have time to deal with the divorce and treat it as a business transaction. A therapist can only go through the emotions without knowing the legal process. So that's what I'm doing. I'm the bridge between the two, where I'll work you through the emotionally safe method to heal and start from a place of healing so that you don't go into the divorce contentious, but empower yourselves to take control of what you want for custody, for finances, and the things that you need to look after. And also think about what your life looks like post-divorce, so that when you do go to an attorney, you become more empowered and you become part of the process rather than reacting to the process.
Are you healed?
Yes.
What are you looking forward to next in your life?
Doing what I'm doing. I mean, I believe that this is my sole purpose. I gave up 3/4 of my practice to do this because I believe in it so much, because my mission is to stop generational trauma that happens as a side effect to divorce.
How old are your children?
21 and 23.
What would they say about their mom?
She's crazy. She talks too much. She talks too much, but she's taught us how to stand up on our own 2 feet and to fight for what you believe in.
What's the most important thing you want to share with the world right now?
Nobody's going to come and save you. You have to help yourself. And only one thing I regret about in my life is that I learned or taught myself the healing 4 decades into my life. I lost a long period of my life because I didn't know who I was. And I'm grateful that I did find out who I was, but nobody's going to come and save you. Do the work, just like you go to the gym, that you do everything else. Emotional work is the pivot of everything in your life, and you need to spend the time to do it.
Well, the world needs you, and for whatever reason you went through all of that to become the divorce journey attorney. I am so honored to meet you. I read your book. I think it's spectacular. I think it will help heal a lot of men and women. And for all of you who are looking at divorce, if you're in a bad relationship, look at what it means to end it, how to heal. If you've been through trauma, know that there's an end date to that if you choose to. Seek help. Take a look at the SAFE method. Where do we go to get to learn more about you?
So you can go to emotionallysafe.com. You can get a free care kit on 7 ways to prioritize your self-care and see if you are doing it.
I love that. I think if you have an opportunity to meet Poonam, you should take it. Even if you're not getting divorced, but you're dealing with the trauma, she's a spectacular, beautiful, deep woman who I am so honored to have on the show today.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for
it. It has been a beautiful journey, my attorney. And we will be right back after this message.